The switch statement. What is a switch statement? The switch statement is the third type of decision structure we're going to be looking at. So our first type was an if, else, and nested if. So that would be a first decision structure. Okay. Second type is the logical operators, where we're putting two together, anding and oring two conditions together. The final kind is what's called a switch statement. Now, what a switch statement does, it essentially does the same thing as an if statement did, or logical operators. It does the same thing, it just does it different. It uses the keywords switch and case. Okay, now a little bit of history on the switch statement. Switch statements are newer in terms of when were they actually developed as part of programming languages. So the if statement came first, and switch statements were added several years later. And Java, we'll talk specific to Java now, most of us are using a Java compiler 6 at this point. And Java compiler is now up to version 8, I believe. So 8 is the most current version. There's been several changes to the switch statement. We're going to look at the switch statement as it was in with compiler 6, which all that means is that you cannot switch in version 6. You cannot switch a string. You also cannot do comparison, so you can't look at ranges like you can in later versions of the switch statement in Java. So we're going to look kind of as it was, not as it is, because many of us might not even have the Java compiler version 8 even installed. So we'll look at what you guys have, what's provided in class. So here's what we're going to do. Just go through lines 1 and 2. Line 1 and 2, that's just our class and our main method, and of course 20, 21, that closes those up. We've also declared at line 5 and 6, we've declared two variables, one data type int, the other string. The int is month and the string is month string. Okay, so those are our two variables, month and month string, data type int and string. Now, what our program is going to do, just give you a really quick overview, pretty simple. We're going to look at the month, and based on whatever the month is, okay, that's an integer value, based on whatever the month is for an integer value, we are going to assign an actual string name for the month. So, if the month is 1, that's January. If the month is 2, that's February. If the month is 3, March, 4, April, through 12, which is December. Okay, so those are those are our months that we're going to be looking at. Now, I'm not going to do every single month because you'll get get the idea pretty well here. So I need to take out these dots, or that's just going to cause an error in Java. So here's what we're going to do. Let's look at how the switch statement works. Switch replaces the keyword if. So if you look at the construction of a switch statement, it works just about the same as an if does. So you throw a switch instead of the word if. And then you have these parentheses. We'll come back to these in a second, but something goes inside the parentheses. So we're just going to have a set of parentheses, then we have an open curly bracket, close curly bracket. Okay, so there's your basic structure. Between these curly brackets, we have our cases. Okay, cases go between the curly brackets. So let's start in an if statement. This was a condition. This would evaluate to either true or false. This is no longer true. With a switch statement, what we want to do is we want to look at the value between those parentheses. In this case, we're looking at the integer month. Okay, we're looking at that variable, and we want to see what its value is. So what's going to happen is whenever we switch month, it's actually just saying, this line just says, well, what is the value of month? Well, right now our value of month is 1. Okay, so now we've switched month. Month has a value of 1. Then these cases just go through the values. Okay, so it says case 1. That case just says, is it value? Is it value 1? And this is what evaluates either true or false. Okay, so case 1, this is actually a true statement. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, is the value of month 1? If it is, month string equals January to February, and we've got 12 December. So if the case were 12, then that's going to be December. Okay, then we get out of the switch statement just like we did with an if statement, and we're going to print our month string. So what should happen with our month equaling 12 and going into the switch statement, oh, by the way, before we actually execute this, just notice the difference. When you do your case, you just do your case, the value that it's going to be, or the value that you're looking for, and then a colon. And then you can run as many lines of code. This is like you were inside of the if statement. You can run as many lines of code as you would like to. Okay, so that's what goes inside of a switch statement. So, and each those just end in a semicolon because this is one single Java statement. All right, so we found a match, we found a value. So what we're going to do is we're just going to compile and run this code, and we should get December. Our DEC should come out, and we're going to run it, and there's December. Cool. Okay, so December actually came out, and that's what happened. Because what happened, the value of month was 12. We switched month, which is a value of 12, and we just looked at all the possible cases that we were going to have. Was not 1, that was false. Was not 2, that was false. Was not 12, that was false. So the first thing you might ask is, well, what if we want to handle, where's the else? You say this is like an if statement, where's the else? Well, the else is right here. It's actually the keyword default. So that's default. And for our default, we'll just assign the month string as no month. So we'll take that and we'll just put it nothing. So now, if we assign month as 13, which that's going to be false, false, and false, then we're going to have our default, so that'll be nothing. So we're going to go compile, and then we're going to click run. And there's nothing because none of our cases matched up. So cool, everything works really good. This is just as we expect it to, and it's very simple. As a matter of fact, if you look at the switch statement, the reason these are newer and a lot of people like them is because how easy it makes looking at everything. So look at your code compared to even the logical operators where you had to and or things together. This is really pretty simple. This is a pretty simple way to approach making decisions. So now what we're going to do is we're going to throw a 1 in here, and our output should be, you guessed it, January. So we'll compile and we're going to run, and we got nothing. So why did we get nothing? One rule with a switch statement that you guys need to know, this is really important. What a switch statement does is whenever it finds a resulting answer, so once it finds a true, the true in this case is case 1. That's the value of 1. So it found it's true, then it assigned month string to January. This would have been fine. Now, in a regular if statement, we would assume that this would be a curly bracket. We would have got out of the if statement. We would have never checked any of the other ones because the other ones didn't matter. We found it true. We found what we were looking for. What a switch statement does is a switch statement, once it finds its first true, it continues all the way down until you get to the end of the switch statement. So what actually happened is it found its true here, and then it assigned month string January, then it went and assigned month string February, December, then month string nothing. That's why we've got nothing here. So that seems pretty, why would they do something like that? Actually, whenever you do your project, you're going to see why it has a very applicable use as long as you have a limited range of numbers. However, for our purposes, what we want to do is we want to tell it to stop. And how you do that is once you find its first true, so this is our line, we want month string to equal January. What we're going to do is we're going to put the command break. And what break does is that's going to tell it to stop. Once we found our correct answer, we're going to hit a break command. So that tells it to stop. Don't go any further. We're done with we've got to the end of where we want to reach if this is a true case. So now if we compile and run this, haven't changed the value of month is still 1, but now we've ended in January. So if we come down here, we'll say after December, we're going to put another break in here. And there's a semicolon. So this is still going to be January because what happened is case 1, this is true, month string equals January. Then we got to the break. The break means leave our switch statement. Remember, if it wasn't 1, we would have came to case 2, and case 2, we'll assume case 2 was the match. It would have been February, December, then break. So what I expect to see now, whenever I switch this to 2, is I expect to see a value of December. Why? Because it's going to find it true here. So February will be assigned a month string, but it's going to continue down until it hits that break or gets to the end of the switch statement, whichever comes first. Once it hits its match in February, goes to December, we're going to go ahead and compile, and December should be my output. And there's your December. So of course we just want to add a break right after break, throw that in, and notice at default we don't need a break. Why? Because that's at the end of the switch statement. That's like your else, your catch-all. So now if we compile and run it, let's go ahead, we'll leave it at 2, compile and run. And now you get your February. So it ran its code. This is a true statement. Run this code until you hit the break or the end of the switch statement. We hit the break first. We come out. We don't search anymore. That is how a switch statement works.